My wife got drunk and admitted she never loved me, so I walked away. She was drunk as she confessed she was never attracted to me and couldn't stop seeing other men. Her words hit me like a slap, and while she passed out, I made my decision. By sunrise, I was gone, no notes, no goodbyes. My name's Phil, and I've always been the kind of guy who believed hard work could fix almost anything. That was how I was raised. Put your head down, grind, and everything else falls into place. I thought that mindset shaped my life, especially my marriage. For as long as I could remember, my days were a blur of meetings, deadlines, and deals. I worked hard. I'd wake up and hustle all day, and by the time I got home, I was too drained to do much more than say goodnight to my wife. But I told myself it was all worth it. I was building a life for us, making sure she'd never have to worry about anything. When I wasn't working, she was all I thought about: how to make her happy, how to give her the life she deserved. I'd bring her gifts when I traveled for work and plan weekend getaways to make up for lost time. It was never perfect, but I figured she understood. Love isn't about being perfect. It's about showing up and trying. At least that's what I thought. Looking back, I realized I might have gotten it wrong. But at the time, I didn't see that. I thought working harder meant loving harder. Lately, though, things had felt off. She barely acknowledged me anymore. At first, I brushed it aside. We'd only been married for 2 years, and I figured we were just settling into the routine of married life. Deep down, I knew something wasn't right, but I didn't want to believe it. I told myself she was just stressed, tired, or going through a phase. I thought if I worked a little harder and showed her how much I cared, everything would go back to how it was. I was convinced that love and effort could fix anything. Turns out I was wrong, very wrong. When I realized things were tense between us, I decided to do something about it. I thought maybe a romantic dinner could help us reconnect. I don't know, maybe I was being naive, but I believed in trying. I spent the entire afternoon preparing. I cooked her favorite meal: chicken parmesan with garlic mashed potatoes, something I hadn't made since our first date. I set the table with candles, dimmed the lights just right, and picked a playlist of slow songs she used to love. It was my way of saying, I see you. I miss you. I'm trying. When she walked through the door, she looked surprised. Wow, she said, glancing around, her eyes landing on the table. For a second, I thought I saw a flicker of something, gratitude, maybe. She kissed my cheek, sat down, and smiled. We started eating, and the conversation flowed light and easy. She complimented the food, joked about how I was secretly a better cook than her, and for the first time in months, she laughed genuinely. In that moment, I thought maybe we could find our way back. But after her third glass of wine, things went downhill fast. She was drunk. It was subtle at first. She leaned back in her chair, her expression loosening, her words coming slower, freer. I didn't think much of it until she set her glass down, looked at me, and said, "You're a nice guy. You make sure I'm okay. That's why I'm here with you." I froze. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice steady even though my stomach was twisting. She laughed softly, but with a hint of pity. "I mean, I've never really been attracted to you. Not in that way." Her words hit me like a freight train, but she didn't stop there. She leaned forward, resting her chin on her hand like she was telling me a casual story. "You're sweet, gentle, safe, but you're not my type." Then she started describing her type: someone rougher, with a darker vibe, someone who isn't afraid to break the rules. The complete opposite of me. And then, as if it wasn't bad enough, she dropped the bomb. When I met him, my type, I just couldn't resist. One thing led to another, and she trailed off, but I didn't need her to finish. I knew what she was saying. I sat there, nodding like a fool, as my wife poured out truths that shattered me. My chest felt heavy, like I couldn't breathe, but I kept my face calm. On the outside, I was composed. But inside, something in me snapped. This wasn't an apology. It wasn't even regret. It was a drunken justification, as if she wanted me to understand her reasons for betraying me. And at that moment, I realized I didn't need to yell. I didn't need to fight. I just needed to let her finish and then decide what to do next. When I went to bed that night, I knew there was no going back. Her words kept replaying in my head. How I wasn't her type, how she stayed with me because I was a nice guy, how she found what she wanted elsewhere. It wasn't just the betrayal that stung. It was the casual way she admitted it. Lying there in the dark, listening to her soft snores, I felt no anger, only clarity. Fighting with her wouldn't change anything. She'd already shown me who she was, and I believed her. Confronting her would only give her the satisfaction of justifying herself. She didn't deserve that. She didn't deserve a fight. She didn't deserve closure. She deserved to see what life without me really meant. By the time the sun came up, I had made my decision. I wouldn't be there when she woke up. I'm not a man who does things impulsively. When I act with precision. That morning, I left the house like I always did, quietly, deliberately, with no sign that anything was out of the ordinary. Except this time, I wasn't coming back. The first call I made was to my lawyer. I told him to prepare the divorce papers and include everything I needed to separate my life from hers. Next, I called my accountant. He was a sharp man, and within hours, he started liquidating my shares in our jointly owned investments. By the end of the day, my accounts were empty, and I had full control over my assets. Then, I called my family. I didn't give them all the details, I didn't need to, but I made one thing clear. Don't entertain her. Don't share my whereabouts. If she calls you, tell her nothing. I wanted her to feel the weight of what she'd done without having anyone to cushion the fall. Finally, I left a message with my lawyer to deliver to her when she inevitably tried to reach me. She'd get the divorce papers soon. No explanations, no apologies, just the cold, hard reality of what she'd lost. A few weeks later, the papers were served. I heard from my lawyer that she tried to reach out, calls, emails, even showing up at his office. I didn't respond. She begged for an explanation. But what could I possibly say that she didn't already know? At first, she didn't want to sign the papers. She was hesitant, dragging her feet. Maybe she thought she could somehow salvage what we had, or maybe she just didn't want to lose the stability I provided. But when she saw the financial settlement, she caved. I wasn't surprised when she signed. After all, she always prioritized herself. And just like that, the chapter was closed. When I walked out of that marriage, I wasn't thinking about what would happen to her. I just wanted to be free from her lies, her disrespect, and her complete lack of care for me as a person. I thought, let her have the life she wants. And for a while it seemed like she did. At first, she seemed to enjoy her new life. She was free, single, and financially secure thanks to the settlement I had worked hard to build. She got her share when we divorced. She started going out more, throwing herself into her usual distractions. Nights out, new clothes, and of course, new men. I heard she even joked about how she finally got to live the life she deserved. But here's the thing about people like her. They never think past the moment. She thought freedom meant doing whatever she wanted without consequences. Life doesn't work like that. Eventually, it catches up with you. One of those freedoms caught up with her in a big way. She ended up pregnant. I found out through a mutual acquaintance, someone who still couldn't resist passing along the gossip. Apparently, it wasn't a planned thing. Not that I'd expect it to be. The father? He vanished the moment she told him. No calls, no texts, nothing. Just gone. She was left to deal with it alone. And it didn't stop there. The settlement money? She burned through it like it was nothing. By the time the baby came, she was in serious debt. She had to sell our old house. Well, her house at that point. It was the last thing left of the life we shared. Then there were her friends, or what was left of them. You see, people like her always attract the same kind of people. Shallow, selfish, and only around when things are fun. When she started asking for help, money, babysitting, a shoulder to cry on, they disappeared one by one. I guess even her best stories couldn't keep them entertained anymore. She got what she thought she wanted, freedom. But that kind of freedom comes with a price. She lost everything.